Putin warns of nuclear war, while Putin says Russia's loss of Wagner forces poses no threat to its military might. The loss of Wagner troops will not affect Moscow's combat position in the Ukraine conflict, according to a senior Russian defense official. Before the Wagner forces attempted an insurrection at the end of last month, they were an integral part of Moscow's advance in Kyiv, but their relationship with the top military brass in the Kremlin was irreparably damaged. Wagner leader Yevgeny Prigozhin fled to Belarus after the failed rebellion, and the group has since announced that it has ceased recruiting. The International Criminal Court in The Hague, which has a limited mandate to pursue crimes of aggression, will be bolstered by the opening of a new center for the prosecution of aggression in Ukraine on Monday. Russian President Vladimir Putin and a top aide are wanted for the unlawful deportation of Ukrainian children, for which warrants have already been issued by the International Criminal Court. A senior Russian official said over the weekend that over 700,000 Ukrainian minors have been taken across the Russian border in recent years, reiterating the Kremlin's position that it offers these children refuge. As Spain assumed the rotating presidency of the European Union Council on July 1, Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez paid a visit to Kyiv as a show of support for Ukraine. According to a readout provided by the German government, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz by phone on Monday to discuss the ongoing war in Ukraine. When the Black Sea Grain Initiative is set to expire on July 17, Zelensky expressed gratitude to Scholz for Germany's support in renewing the program and for continuing military aid. As Russia's war marches into its 500th day, the two leaders also agreed to maintain close communication. During the conflict in Ukraine, the United Nations backed a deal to create a humanitarian sea corridor for agricultural products, but the Kremlin has cast doubt on whether or not this deal will be renewed. 3 Ukrainian ports have shipped over 32 million metric tons of agricultural products to 45 countries as part of the agreement. This month, the agreement for grain exports from the Black Sea will come to an end. Some of the commitments, with Russia, have not been met yet. When asked about a possible extension, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov told reporters, "There is still some time before the deadline, but there are not so many hopes." As for the renewal talks, Peskov said he had no new information to share. Moscow has recently argued that Kyiv is the only beneficiary of the Black Sea Grain Initiative and has urged all signatories to expand the deal to allow for the export of Russian fertilizer. According to estimates by the United Nations Refugee Agency, over 6.3 million Ukrainians have fled to neighboring countries since the Kremlin launched its full-scale invasion in February of last year. According to the data collected by the agency, the vast majority of refugees have settled in neighboring European countries, and roughly 362,000 have traveled beyond Europe's borders. A memorial to the 501 civilians who lost their lives in Bucha. Ukrainians pay their respects at a newly opened memorial in Bucha for civilians killed by Russian troops in the region north of Kyiv. There are more than 500 names on the memorial, but many more people were likely killed and remain unaccounted for. Hundreds of civilians, some showing signs of torture, died during the brutal Russian occupation of Bucha and were buried in mass graves or left on the streets. More than 175 people were discovered in mass graves and alleged torture chambers in the Bucha district, according to the Ukrainian government. This number includes 37 children. After Russia's February 2022 invasion of Ukraine, Russian troops occupied Bucha for weeks before Ukrainian forces retook the city a month later. War crimes investigations are being conducted in the region by international investigators.